There is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. You'll hear stories about this, so much more, right here on Supernatural Confrontations. I have not heard this story, so I'm hearing it for the first time. And Chris is nice enough to come on and tell us this story. I think this might be something extremely interesting and certainly supernatural, and we'll get into that. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Folks, have you taken a good look at the banks lately? On the surface, everything seems fine, but there seems to be a whole lot more going on underneath. It's like looking under the hood of a car and finding a mess of broken wires and parts. The parts are loans for homes, cars, and those credit cards we all use. Folks, they're hitting record highs. It's kind of scary when you think about it. Why risk your money for a tiny 5% return when things are so shaky? This is where Noble Gold Investments can help. They're like that friend who knows all about keeping money safe. They suggest gold and silver, oldies but goodies in the financial world. Plus, they've got a sweet deal, a free 1/4 ounce gold standard coin this month if you qualify. Pretty good stuff, right? If you're curious, just give them a call at 877-646-5347. It's just a chat, no pressure. They'll help you figure out if gold and silver are right for you. Or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Once again, the number 877-646-5347. Folks, we've invested in Noble Gold, and quite frankly, I'm glad we did. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Let's just jump right in. What happened?
A little bit of context might be necessary. And first off, Billy, let me say that I have followed your work and your ministry for a long time, and I'm really grateful, and I'm super excited to be able to talk to you and to meet you with you like this. So thank you very much for taking the time for me. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for the kind words, but I always say this just to set the record straight. Anything that I might be is because of what he's done in my life. End of story. Please continue.
I knew you were going to say that.
There you go. Let's let's clear that up right from the get-go. But please continue.
Right on, man. So a little backstory is kind of required for this. I've been a Sasquatch experiencer for a long time.
Okay.
And about 5 years ago, I moved to the Southwest from New England, and I moved to Arizona. And I linked up with a handful of like-minded souls that I had known online for a long time. And I kind of came into this group of guys that it's a really special thing. Most of these guys are vet. One of them was actually the fire chief in one of the largest cities in Arizona for 30 years, and a lot of cachet. And we started having experiences out in the woods in the Mogollon Rim, which is in north central Arizona, a beautiful, very remote area where there's 3 national forests converge: Coconino, Apache Sitgreaves, and Tonto. Vast wilderness, huge ponderosa pine forests, and we started to get a lot of interaction, and this progressed for years.
Wow.
Until and no other way to put it, we were asked to put the cameras down, and we did.
I got to stop you right there. You were asked to put the cameras down, which begs the question: who were you asked by?
We were asked by the forest people.
Okay. When you say forest people, what do you mean by that?
I mean by the Sasquatch people.
Okay.
That's what I refer to them as. Some of these things, when they come out of my mouth, I know they sound absolutely insane.
No, they don't.
This is my truth, man.
This is why you're here, because this is a safe place. I believe you. I know you're telling me the truth. So pick up the story.
Okay. So, like I said, that occurred, and when we kind of put the tech aside and the video and the time stamping and all those things, it's kind of a common thing when you're going in this journey, right? Things started to really ramp up and heat up. We started to have degrees of communication. We started to get a lot more interaction, for lack of a better term, visual interaction as well. Like, I've seen some crazy things. Moving forward, about 2.5 years ago, I was involved in an industrial accident where I work. And I got my hand caught in a chemical agitator, a giant, like the size of your garage, with an auger that goes through it. And without going into the graphic details, my hand got caught in this thing. I started to get pulled into the tank, and I amputated my right hand, destroyed my forearm and my shoulder. It was a type of injury that like happens to other people. It was an unbelievably catastrophic injury.
Wow.
My hand almost was completely off, except for it was hanging by a little piece of skin. And here it is right here. I still keep, because I live in Arizona, the sun, because the new skin still messes it up. But so as a result of that, I was out of commission. I was hospitalized for 3 months. I had an incredible orthopedic surgeon and a vascular surgeon attempt to rebuild my hand. And 22 surgeries later and 3 months in the hospital, they were able to save it and get blood flow to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was brutal. You know, it was the most physically challenging thing that's obviously ever happened to me in my life. And so a couple months out, I'm home, I'm trying to recover. I have zero use of my entire upper right extremity, my right arm, my hand. I can't pronate or supinate my arm. My shoulder's a mess. And my right hand, they actually had to go back in and amputate a finger not shortly after I got out because it wasn't healing properly. So I had all the flexor tendons were destroyed in my arm. There's no way they can rebuild those, not with any degree of function. And so I'm home and I'm trying to recuperate. I'm trying to recover from this. And I would call this guy the leader of our group, who happens to be a minister, I might asked me if I would like to come out. And I had been in a hospital bed for months. And I was a little reticent to do it because at this point I can't even pull my pants up. I have to wear slip-on shoes. Like I am just as low as I've been spiritually and physically, emotionally in my life.
I believe it. I mean, I can't even relate to that. That's wow. What an ordeal.
So I agreed to go out. He's like, Chris, just come out, man. He said, we'll set up a 10-man tent, throw a cot in there for you. We'll do everything. Just get out into nature. Let's get you back in the game a little bit, you know? So I agreed. So I went out with my friend Kev and another fella named Chuck, who was part of our gang. And so we go out. We go up on the Mogollon Rim. Actually, that's not where we were. We were in north of the Roosevelt Lake. We have a place we like to go to way up on the Young Highway.
Yeah,
up
probably
in
middle of nowhere.
Beautiful.
Right.
Right. I mean, literally nowhere.
Yeah, I get it.
So we get out, and it's a little chilly. You know, it's just the end of October, and so it's getting cool up in elevation around here. And we have a nice night. I mean, I am so grateful just to be out in nature with my friends.
Wow.
And we don't have a lot of activity, little kind of light phenomenon that goes on. A lot of times it seems to we call them twinkle lights for lack of a better term. It seems to kind of herald their presence, or that just happens when there's stuff around, you know? But that was it. So I go to bed that evening, probably around 11 o'clock, crawl into the tent, get in the sleeping bag, and, get a nice heater going in there. It's nice. And I drift off. And I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 hours later, are you familiar with what a TENS unit is?
No, I am not.
It's an electrical apparatus that they use to stimulate bone healing and muscle growth.
Okay.
It sends an electrical impulse, like you would attach it to anywhere in your body where they feel. And it sends, if you dial it up pretty high, it's pretty intense. And it sends little electrical, it's a common orthopedic thing that they use for people and muscular issues as well. Right. I wake up like somebody had stuck a TENS unit pad on the back of my neck and had turned this thing up to maximum output. Yeah. Wow, okay. I mean, not painful, but it was intense.
Okay.
And let me back this up. I've had that zap phenomenon occur to me numerous times. This was like that, but exponentially more powerful.
Okay.
And it travels from my neck down to my feet and back up to my neck. It lasts for less than 2 minutes. And I'm just laying there basically paralyzed in bed while this is happening in the cot. And it stops. And I know that it's the forest people that have done this. Like, I've had this phenomenon occur, but like I said, not on that level. And so I'm not that alarmed by it, because it's been something that happens amongst us, that maybe not to that degree, but fairly common.
Okay.
So I drift off back to sleep. Now, mind you, before I got out there, I'm using a super sling, which is something that attaches my arm directly. So I have,
I've seen those. I've seen people in those.
My hands are like this.
I got it.
I got nothing.
I got it. Right.
But I take it off in the evening because my whole side falls asleep if I do it. So I release it because it's a little safer at the time to do. And so I have no sling on. So the next morning I wake up, I have to go relieve myself. So I don't have the sling on, and I walk out the tent, and my two buddies are starting a fire because it is freezing, and we got a fire going, and I go to relieve myself about, say, 20 feet away from where they're building the fire, and I'm wearing bibs because it's chilly outdoors, and like muscle memory, unconsciously, I go and I unzip my bibs with my right hand.
Oh boy.
Which was
you can't do that.
Impossible.
Right.
And I realize it's as I'm doing it, what's happening. And I get them all the way down, and then I stop and I start to rotate my arm, which
you couldn't do.
Impossible.
Right.
Hours before. Then I start to manipulate my fingers, which that's medically impossible because I don't have flexor tendons to do that.
Wow.
So the pain in my shoulder is gone, the pain in my arm is gone, and my hand pain, which was still intense, is gone. And I had regained a degree of function that while isn't perfect, was exponentially better than it should possibly be. And as this dawns on me, my friends are watching me, and I start to sob. I mean, just uncontrollably. It was like this unbelievable, it was shock, basically. And I walk away to compose myself. And I know that they did this. I know they did. And so I speak out verbally as I'm about 30 feet down the trail. I thank you so much for what you've done. And I get back this, like a bubble of love and compassion that it was not coming from within. It was projected onto me. LA, there's no other way to put it. It was so profound. It altered me as a human. I think as we grow older and we think we have some idea of what selflessness and mature emotional love is. And this flipped my paradigm on that, because it made me look internally again to see if I could do that for someone else.
Wow.
Like to just be completely selfless. It was the most spiritual thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And I am a Christian as well. And so I'm always curious. I've always wanted to have this conversation with you because I knew Scott a little bit, rest in peace.
Right.
And I know, and I've been on the trail of the Nephilim riding your coattails for a long time, and I used to believe 100% that Scott's work, your work, Melba's work, who I also know, that checked a lot of boxes, LA. It really did. From the DNA study to what Scott firmly believed in, his devoutness as well as your own. And if you had asked me 5 years ago, I was in that. I believed that was 100%. I also know that this does not encompass the entire spectrum of the phenomenon. It doesn't. But it's been my experience, and I no longer believe that. I don't. I know that there's a biblical element to all of it. I know there is. I don't know that who we're interacting with can be lumped into the I go back and forth with it. I know that just because you're German doesn't make you a Nazi. That's kind of sometimes where I think about that. But
Let me
But
ask you some
I'm not
questions.
sure, and I've always wanted your perspective.
Yeah,
on it.
let me ask you some questions. First of all, Chris, you know, the healing has lasted. How many years ago is that?
This was in October of 22, so we're coming up on a year and a half.
Okay,
plus.
so it's not what when you went to. I'm assuming you went to your physicians and you showed them this. What was their reaction?
Okay, I had an ethical dilemma here, and so it was a work injury. There was a lot riding on it. You know, my future. It had taken away my ability to earn in the field that I was familiar with. It's all I've ever done, and I didn't know how to bring this to the table. I never did. I was done with the surgeries. I had already sought out a second opinion because these people would have done surgery on me ad infinitum because
I know.
it was
never
a
ends.
comp injury.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I was spiritually done with it, LA. You know, I'm a recovering addict for a long time, and I had been put back on these meds that were. Yeah,
that's not cool.
But it was. You know, I had to go through that whole thing again. You know, thank goodness, thank Jesus, who kept me through that situation, that I never went backwards. I just leaned into God.
So let me ask you this. You're up there in the middle of nowhere. They're communicating with you telepathically.
Correct.
That's got some checks for me because, you know, we've heard all this before. But here's the deal. I've also heard, and this is what makes it really complex. I interviewed Kat and her husband a while back, a couple of years ago. And they live in the middle of nowhere, and they interact.
I remember that.
Yeah, they interact with these guys all the time. I mean, when I think it's Kevin that goes out. I can't remember his name. Please forgive me. But he goes out, and the little ones follow him around. I mean, they throw stones at him all day, and then the big ones come in the evening, and they sit down and chat and talk. And I mean, you know, they met Glad, and it just goes on and on and on. I don't know what we're looking at here. My first instinct is with Scott Carpenter, and Scott and I had numerous discussions about this. And between
I watched them.
Yeah, between you, me, and the wall, I think they were responsible for his death. That's what I think.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
I always.
And I've never said that publicly, Chris. I've never said that publicly. You're the first person I'm telling you this to publicly. I truly believe
here's what
they
I
took
think
him
about
out.
Scott. I think that Scott's Christian sensibilities kicked in at the right time, and he realized that I don't know if that's true or not, but I know that one of the reasons why Scott actively stopped, I hate the term researching, but researching was because he was getting a lot of negative things happening around him his home. I knew Scott a little bit,
right,
and I actually interviewed him right before he passed away.
Right.
And I knew about that, you know,
right.
and I always
too.
thought that he was frightened, and that he didn't want to deal with that, you know.
Right.
And I get it. Like I say, you know, I'm always looking for an alternative biblical context with these things. I think about Jacob and Esau, which is maybe another clue into this. I think the answers are in the Bible. I don't know that Genesis 6, with what I'm dealing with at this point, and I also preface this by saying I know I can be greatly deceived, LA. Like, I am not have some perfect discernment. It's the opposite. I'm always on guard about it. You know, we always try to take whatever precautions we can, but I've just never, and I've never seen amongst our guys.
Let me ask you this. You know, I think that the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, are the Therion, the beasts of the earth. That's what I think. I think they are a biological construct, and I know Scott Carpenter believed that these are modern-day Nephilim. Okay, I get that. Is it possible? I mean, why would they come and heal you? That's the first thing.
That's what Kevin said.
Why would they do this? If anything,
do you think a Nephilim would be even able to project love?
No, he's not. And that's,
or do something kind.
Right. And see, the other thing is, you know, and this is what you don't know. You saw little points of light flying around the campsite.
Often. Okay.
What if that's like an angelic signature? You're up there, and what if angels did it? See, I just, this is, your story is why we have to tread carefully, because you just can't, like, for instance, the first time I heard Gary Stearman's story, about the UFO way in the distance? If you look to your left, you'll see a UFO. Bam! It's like right there. Gary said on the record in our Watcher series, the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. So with that in mind, you know, the good guys have them too. How do we know that? 2 Kings. I looked up and saw the chariots of fire. Those
Absolutely.
are UFOs.
That's the context that they can put it into.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So is it possible? Is it possible? This is just total conjecture. We're having a conversation because this is the unknown. Is it possible?
It's all conjecture, LA.
I mean, is it possible that Father God created some good ones too? And those are the ones that showed up. I realize, oh my God, people are going to freak out when they hear me say that. But we don't know. And that's why we have to be careful because, I mean, look, you got healed and what happened to you is miraculous. I would say, and then you're overcome with love. So, that's the signature of a Lord. I mean, the enemy doesn't do that.
I always think like, where was I going to go with this? From the healing standpoint and from what you're saying, like, I know that, so we've been told, when I first started going out with Kev, I had a lot of questions. I've been around this a long time, but These guys are a little bit further down the road than anybody I know and had known of. And I was brought into it, and I would bring up some more unsavory or darker elements. And I got direct mind speak at the exact same time that Kevin did. Don't talk about those things. It brings them to you. We were warned about that.
Wow.
There's multiple situations and different entities out there simultaneously going on with these things. The other cryptid phenomenon. I mean, been up in the mountains too long not to have seen some pretty crazy UFO stuff. There's a common thread through all of it. I know.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, look, let's wrap it up. I mean, the bottom line is you did experience something extremely supernatural. There's a couple of flags on the play. The one thing is you're being communicated with telepathically, and that's always troublesome to me because, in my opinion, and I get that. I mean, they're doing mind speak. I know about that. That's the way they communicate. It's for me, as a researcher like yourself, it's on the back burner. I need more info. The fact is that you're still healed after going on 2 years. And you should read Joanna Michelson's Beautiful Side of Evil, because she studied under a bruja, a witch in Mexico, and this woman would heal people, but the healings were always temporary. They didn't last, and that's the hallmark of the enemy. Yeah, he can fake it. I know. There it is. Right. So
the jury's still out on how much time is enough time. Who knows?
That's the deal. It's going on 2 years. In my humble opinion, and again, I can stand corrected, I'm leaning very heavily. These are the good guys, but
I think there are good guys.
I think so too.
I followed your trail for so long. I just finished Timothy Alberino's book, Birthright. Like I'm trying to stay as dialed in as I can, but I try not to let my own beliefs and my own paradigm dictate my experience. I try to do it vice versa and hope I have enough spiritual discernment to know the difference. And I very well may not,
Well, let's see where it goes. I would ask you to do this. I would ask you to go before the Lord in your own time and ask him, just point blank between you and Jesus, Father, was this from you? Just ask him. And you know what? He will. Let me finish. He will give you an answer, Chris. He will give you an answer. Go before him and ask him, Lord,
I will.
Is this from you?
I will. I'll do it tonight in prayer.
Thank you. And then get back to me.
Tell you this. So I was with another one of our guys, and I heard it as well, where this man was asked to profess his faith in the Lord in front of them out loud to all of us. And he basically rattled off the Apostles' Creed. And there was cheering in the back. That happened. I mean, there's been, whoever we're dealing with, there's an element, they believe in Christ. We've been gifted crosses. Like, there's a lot of stuff here, LA. Like, there's so many more. I could break this down to you for a long time.
Well,
I know we don't have that kind of
Chris,
time.
no, this is good for today. We'll have you back on. Okay?
Whenever you want.
Yeah, let's pray about it, see if the Lord gives you an answer, and we'll go from there, okay?
I have to forewarn you that I'll see you tomorrow. I will. Bettina Moss is a close friend.
Oh,
I've known her
okay.
for years.
There you
and
go.
she asked me right after you agreed to come on her show if I would co-host with her.
Yeah, great.
And that
I'll
was
see you
just
tomorrow.
lined up with, like, that's crazy, right? I mean, there's no such thing as coincidence. I just thought, I've been such a huge fan and follower of yours
Well,
because I
praise the
believe
Lord.
in your truth. You know, I love it. So
Praise
I'm
the
really
Lord.
excited. I just wanted to pre-warn you.
Yeah,
You'll see this ugly mug again
No,
tomorrow.
what time is that tomorrow? 4 o'clock or
It's
something?
at 4 years. I live
Yeah.
in Arizona, but we're on the same time.
Okay,
So it's
okay,
at 4
great.
o'clock tomorrow.
Well,
She's fantastic. Great experience. You're very devout as well. She's
Okay,
great.
let me wrap this up, folks. That's it for today. The supernatural world is real. Very intense conversation here. Jury is still out. We'll see if the Lord gives Chris a direct answer. I know if you pray to him and you ask, you will receive. And I think let's wait and see what Chris says, and we'll go from there. Look, the supernatural world is really complex. Let's face it. Talking donkeys, floating axe heads, virgin birth, water that's changing the wine, and on it goes. So, jury's still out. We proceed cautiously, always looking to the Lord for direction. Thanks so much for coming on, Chris. Really appreciate it. Go to our website. You got all sorts of stuff happening there. The Roswell films, I'll hold it up here. There they are. They're available. You can stream them.
To them.
Thank you. You can stream them.
On the gym today, on the elliptical, I was listening to a link that you had sent.
All right. You can stream them, folks. Streaming.lamarzulli.net. That's it. Remember, the world, there is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. Thanks so much for watching.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago.
The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucer. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brizzell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like.